The night was alive with music, laughter, and glittering lights. A grand hall stood tall, dressed in gold and crystal, filled with actors, directors, and voices that carried the power of fame. Every corner held whispers, cameras flashed endlessly, and each smile hid a story. It was an evening meant for celebration, yet in the middle of that bright stage of life, a shadow quietly crept into Ana de Armas's heart. She walked in wearing a silver gown that seemed to catch every light and turn it into magic. People stopped, they looked, they admired. But then, as she moved further inside, she caught sight of Keanu Reeves. He was there, simple as always, in his black suit. No grand gestures, no desire to shine brighter than anyone else. His presence alone carried something different. Quiet respect, a warmth that seemed to spread without effort. People turned toward him, not just because he was a star, but because he had the gift of humility. Ana smiled at first, but deep inside, a sting of jealousy rose. She wanted the same warmth directed at her. She wanted to feel that kind of silent admiration, not only for her beauty, but for her soul. Instead, she heard a group whispering. Someone said softly, "Look at how kind he is, how everyone feels safe around him. That is rare in this place." Those words were not cruel, yet they cut into her pride. Her smile weakened, her eyes lowered, and her steps felt heavier. In her heart she wondered, why him and not me? Why do they speak of his kindness like it is a crown? Have I not worked hard enough? Have I not shown that I, too, can be gentle, respectful, and true? The questions hurt her more than the whispers. Moments later, the host called Keanu to the stage. He walked calmly, almost shy, and the applause grew like a wave. He spoke few words, yet every word carried weight. He thanked the crew, the smallest, names, the ones often forgotten, and the hall went silent. People listened, not just with ears, but with hearts. Ana watched from her seat, and her chest tightened. Her night felt broken, not because of him, but because jealousy whispered louder than her own truth. As Keanu stepped down, people rushed to him. They shook his hand. They praised him. They smiled with genuine respect. Ana turned her face away, her eyes glassy, hiding the emotion she could not explain. She felt invisible, though she stood in a shining gown in a hall full of lights. Yet, destiny often moves quietly. Keanu, while speaking with others, noticed her. Her smile was there, but her eyes told another story. Soft, fragile, and heavy, with something unsaid. He excused himself from the crowd and walked toward her. Each step he took carried no noise, but it carried presence. "Ana," he said gently, his voice calm, warm, steady like a hand in the dark. She looked at him, forcing another smile, but he saw beyond it. "You were incredible tonight," he continued. "Not for what you wore, not for how you walked in, but for how you carried yourself with grace even when the lights weren't on you." Her lips trembled. Nobody had said that to her. They spoke of her beauty, her style, her fame, but rarely of her quiet strength. For the first time that evening, her heart softened. I don't know if that's true," she whispered. Keanu smiled. That same gentle smile the world admired. "It is. And you don't need to doubt it. Sometimes when we think others can't see us, that is when someone notices us the most." His words slipped into her heart like light through a broken window. The weight of jealousy began to ease. The sting turned into a warmth she hadn't expected. The music rose again in the hall, people laughed, cameras flashed, but in that one small moment, the noise around them faded. Ana realized the night wasn't broken. It was being healed, not by grand applause, but by quiet kindness. And in the glow of that kindness, she felt something new. Respect, not the kind the world shouted for, but the kind that touched the soul in silence. And that was only the beginning of the night's story. The music in the hall continued to play, yet for Anna, the sound was far away. Keanu's words stayed with her, echoing deeper than the laughter and applause. She kept replaying them in her mind as if they were lines from a story she had been waiting her whole life to hear. She sat quietly, her silver gown shining under the chandeliers. But for once she was not thinking about how she looked. She was thinking about how she felt. And the truth was simple. She had felt seen, truly seen, not for the lights around her, but for something inside her. It was a strange, almost fragile relief. Keanu sat down beside her, not close enough to stir whispers, yet not distant either. His calm presence created a small space of peace in a noisy world. Anna looked around. People were still surrounding other stars, laughing too loudly, trying to outshine one another. But between her and Keanu, silence spoke louder than words. "Keanu," she finally said, her voice low, "do you ever feel like you are invisible, even in a room full of people?" He glanced at her, his eyes kind. "All the time," he replied. "But invisibility is not always a curse. Sometimes it means you can see more clearly. You can notice things others miss." Anna tilted her head, confused, yet intrigued. "Like what?" He paused, then said softly, "Like the sadness behind a beautiful smile." Her chest tightened. He had noticed. Her walls, carefully built through years of fame, had not fooled him, and for a moment, she wondered if this man, praised for his kindness, carried his own weight of unseen struggles. Then something unexpected happened. Across the hall, two actresses whispered and looked toward Anna. One of them let out a small laugh just sharp enough to sting. It was subtle, almost hidden, but Anna caught it. Her heart sank again, jealousy now mixed with shame. She lowered her gaze, feeling her night slip away once more. Keanu noticed their glances too, but instead of ignoring them, he stood up. He reached, his hand out to Anna, his gesture gentle but strong. "Come with me," he said. Anna hesitated, her eyes wide. "Where?" "Just trust me." The hall grew quieter as people noticed them walking together. Keanu led her toward a corner where a group of young filmmakers stood. They were not famous. Their clothes were plain, and no one had asked them for pictures. Their eyes showed both nervousness and awe as Keanu approached. "Have you met Anna?" Keanu asked them warmly. "She's one of the most talented people I know." The group's faces lit up. They turned to her, their respect genuine, their admiration unfiltered. For once, Anna was not being admired for her gown or beauty, but for her craft, her work, her essence as an artist. "We've seen your films," one of them said. "You inspired us to start writing our own stories." Anna's eyes watered, but this time it wasn't from jealousy. It was from something far more powerful, being valued for who she truly was. She looked at Keanu, her voice trembling. "Why did you do that?" Keanu gave a small smile. "Because sometimes all someone needs is a reminder of who they are beyond the noise." His words sank into her like a balm to an old wound. She realized that his kindness wasn't just about being polite. It was about lifting others when they couldn't lift themselves. And in that moment, as she stood in the glow of respect that felt real and pure, Anna understood that the night was changing. What had begun with jealousy was now transforming into something unexpected, a chance for healing, a chance to rediscover her own worth. The hall still shone with its golden lights, but to her, the brightest light now came from a simple truth. Kindness could change not just a night, but a heart. And yet the night was far from over. More challenges, more whispers, and more lessons were waiting for them both. The night carried on, but for Anna, everything felt different. She walked back to her seat with Keanu, and for the first time that evening she was not weighed down by the whispers or the comparisons. His small act of kindness had shifted something inside her, but she did not yet know how fragile that peace was. The hall grew louder as the awards continued. Laughter echoed, glasses clinked, and flashes of cameras lit the room like sudden storms. Anna tried to focus on the moment, yet a quiet fear lingered in her heart. What if those whispers returned? What if she once again felt overshadowed? Keanu, sitting beside her, seemed calm. Almost too calm, as if he carried silence within him no matter where he went. Anna admired that, but she also wondered how he managed it. Then, another twist came. A presenter on stage, with a playful tone, joked about the night's stars. And of course, he said with a chuckle, everywhere we go, people talk about Keanu's kindness. It makes the rest of us look bad, doesn't it? The crowd laughed loudly, clapping in agreement. Anna's stomach twisted. The joke was light, but it only reminded her of the weight she had felt earlier. Once again, the spotlight of admiration was on him, and the shadow of doubt fell over her. She shifted uncomfortably, her hands tightening around her clutch. Keanu noticed, as always. He leaned closer and whispered, "Don't let that shake you. Kindness isn't a competition." She turned to him, her eyes uncertain. "But it feels like it is. Everyone sees you as this perfect man. Do you know what that feels like for someone standing beside you? It feels small." Her voice broke slightly at the last word. Keanu didn't answer right away. He let the silence breathe between them. Then he said softly, "Anna, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've failed. I've been lost. People don't see all that. They only see what shines through. But that shine comes from scars, not from being flawless." His words struck her deeply. She hadn't expected honesty, raw and unpolished, in the middle of a glamorous night. Before she could reply, another wave of whispers came from a nearby table. A couple of guests glanced at her, their expressions sharp, as if measuring her worth against Keanu's. One of them murmured, "She doesn't carry herself like him. She's trying, but it's not the same." The words pierced through her heart. Her chest grew tight, her throat heavy. Anna excused herself quickly, standing up before anyone could see her tears. She walked out of the hall, her heels echoing against the marble floor. Outside, the air was cooler, quieter. But her thoughts screamed louder than the music inside. She leaned against a column, struggling to hold herself together. The night had become too heavy. Every whisper, every comparison, every moment that reminded her she wasn't enough. But moments later, she heard footsteps. Keanu had followed her. He didn't ask permission. He just stood there beside her, silent, at first letting her feel the comfort of his presence. "Anna," he finally said, his voice calm, "you don't have to prove yourself tonight. Not to them, not to me. You are already enough." She shook her head, her tears falling. "You don't understand, Keanu. They look at you and see kindness. They look at me and see flaws. I can't bear it anymore." Keanu looked at her with steady eyes. "Then let them see. Let them see flaws. Because flaws are not shame. They are human. And kindness isn't about being flawless. It's about standing with someone even when they think they are breaking." His words broke something inside her, but this time it wasn't jealousy. It was the wall she had built around her heart. She breathed deeply, slowly, and for the first time, she allowed herself to be vulnerable, not as the actress in the silver gown, but as Anna, the woman who wanted to be valued not for perfection, but for truth. And in that quiet corner, away from the lights, she realized Keanu wasn't healing the night with grand gestures. He was healing it with presence, with words that reached places applause could never touch. Still, the night was not finished. Storms always returned before dawn, and the hall they had left behind carried more trials, more whispers, and perhaps even more painful truths waiting for them. The cool air outside helped calm Anna's trembling chest, but inside the hall the celebration pressed on. She wiped her tears quickly, afraid that if anyone saw her like this, the whispers would only grow sharper. Keanu, standing quietly beside her, gave her space, as if he knew that silence itself could be a kind of kindness. For a few moments, they stood together under the dim glow of the hallway lights. Then Keanu spoke again, his voice gentle, steady. "Anna, do you know why people admire kindness? It's not because it shines brighter than others. It's because it makes others feel less alone." Anna listened, her heart softening. Yet, doubt still tugged at her. "But when people compare me to you," she whispered, "I feel like I don't measure up. I feel invisible next to you." Keanu shook his head lightly. "You're not invisible, Anna. You're just looking at yourself through the wrong mirror. You're seeing yourself through their eyes, not your own." His words sank into her, but before she could reply, the sound of applause echoed from the hall again. Another award had been announced, another speech given. They were missing the show. Yet for Anna, this conversation mattered more than any trophy. Still, she knew they had to go back. She straightened her gown, drew in a breath, and said softly, "Let's go." When they stepped back into the hall, heads turned. Some eyes were curious, others judgmental, but Keanu walked with a calm strength, as if no opinion in the room could touch him. Anna tried to follow his lead, holding her chin slightly higher. They returned to their table, but as soon as they sat, the night delivered another test. A well-known actress leaned closer from the next table and, with a smile that wasn't really a smile, said loudly enough for others to hear, "Anna, you must feel so lucky to sit beside the kindest man in Hollywood. It must be hard to keep up with him." The words struck like a blade wrapped in silk. The hall chuckled politely at the comment, but Anna felt her face flush hot. She forced a small smile, though her heart shrank inside her. Keanu looked at the woman, his eyes calm but firm. "No," he said gently. "It's me who feels lucky to sit beside Anna. She has a strength people don't always see, but I see it." The room went quiet for a moment. The actress blinked, caught off guard, while others glanced between them. Anna's chest tightened, not with pain this time, but with something warmer. She hadn't expected him to stand up for her so openly. Still, whispers floated around again, some admiring his response, others quietly gossiping about the exchange. Anna leaned closer to Keanu and whispered, "Why did you say that?" He turned to her with a small smile. "Because it's true, and sometimes the truth needs to be spoken out loud." Her eyes stung again, but this time with gratitude. As the night continued, Anna began to notice something she hadn't before. Each time Keanu was praised, he gently redirected the spotlight. When someone spoke about his humility, he mentioned the hard work of the crew. When they admired his calm, he pointed to the courage of others. He never clung to the admiration. He shared it. And slowly, the weight inside her chest began to shift. Perhaps she didn't need to outshine him. Perhaps the real strength was in lifting others, just as he did. Yet even as her heart started to heal, she knew the night wasn't over. One more challenge was waiting, one that would test not just her feelings, but her understanding of what true respect and resilience meant. The stage was set, and the story of the night still had twists left to unfold. The evening grew deeper, and though the chandeliers still glowed brightly, the air inside the hall began to feel heavier. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the endless chatter, all of it blended into a blur for Anna. She had felt waves of jealousy, shame, gratitude, and relief, all in the same night. and her heart struggled to keep balance. But the true test was about to arrive. The host returned to the stage with a bright smile and announced, "And now, we honor those who represent not only talent but also grace and character." The words hung in the air like a quiet promise. Everyone in the hall straightened, waiting for the name. And then it came. Keanu Reeves. The hall erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering. Cameras flashed with a storm of light. Anna sat frozen for a moment, her chest tightening. Again. She wanted to be happy for him. Truly she did. But deep inside, a sting of envy returned. It wasn't the award itself, but the way the room seemed to bend entirely toward him, as if no one else existed. Keanu rose, his calm expression unchanged. Before walking to the stage, he turned to Anna, and for a second, their eyes met. His gaze carried warmth, as if silently saying, "You are not forgotten." He stepped onto the stage and accepted the honor. The applause slowly faded as he began to speak. "Thank you," he said simply. "I don't take this lightly, but I also know awards are not really about one person. They're about everyone who makes the journey possible." He paused, then continued. "Tonight, I've been reminded that true grace is not in standing alone, but in standing together. And there is someone here who inspires me with that truth. Anna." Anna's breath caught. Her heart pounded in her chest as every head in the hall turned toward her. "Anna," Keanu said, his voice steady. "Your strength, your resilience, your kindness, whether seen or unseen, remind us all that light doesn't always come from the loudest place. Sometimes it comes quietly, from someone who keeps walking even when the shadows feel heavy. I admire that. We should all admire that." A hush filled the room. Then, slowly, the applause began again, this time directed not only at Keanu, but at her. The sound grew louder, genuine, respectful. Anna's eyes filled with tears she could no longer hold back. It wasn't the applause that moved her. It was the fact that he had chosen to share his moment, to lift her when she had felt small, to remind her of her own worth in front of everyone. When he returned to the table, she whispered, her voice breaking, "Why did you do that? This was your moment." Keanu smiled softly. "My moment means nothing if it can't bring light to someone else. What good is respect if you can't share it?" Her tears slipped down, but she didn't wipe them away. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel openly, without shame. She leaned closer, her voice trembling but sincere. "You don't know how much I needed to hear that tonight." He placed a gentle hand over hers, not as a gesture for cameras, but as a quiet reassurance only meant for her. "Maybe I do," he said quietly. The hall moved on, the show continued. But for Anna, time slowed. The jealousy that had nearly broken her earlier now felt like a distant shadow. In its place grew something deeper, respect for the man beside her, but also a new respect for herself. Still, she knew the night had one final turn left. Whispers would return, doubts would rise again, and choices would have to be made. The last test was yet to come, and it would decide how this night and her heart would truly end. The hall was glowing brighter than ever, yet inside Anna's heart, a storm lingered. Keanu's words on stage had lifted her in a way she never imagined. His kindness had turned her invisible pain into strength. But as the night stretched on, she realized her journey wasn't finished. Respect and admiration from the crowd could vanish as quickly as the lights once the event was over. What mattered now was whether she could carry this change within herself. The final award of the evening was announced. People clapped half-heartedly, some already thinking of the after-parties, but Anna barely heard. Her mind was busy replaying every moment of the night, her jealousy, her tears, the whispers, and Keanu's quiet ways of lifting her again and again. Then, as the music played and people began leaving their seats, another test came. A well-known critic approached their table. His tone was polite, but his words were sharp. "Anna," he said with a thin smile, "you looked lovely tonight, but honestly, I don't think you'll ever shine quite like Keanu. He has a presence that nobody can compete with, don't you? Feel that?" The words could have broken her again, the way they might have just hours before. But this time, something had shifted inside her. She felt the sting, but she also remembered Keanu's voice. "You are already enough." Before she could answer, Keanu spoke firmly. "She doesn't need to compete with me. She shines in her own way. And anyone who can't see that is looking through the wrong eyes." Anna turned to him, surprised by the strength in his tone. The critic smiled awkwardly, muttered something, and walked away. Keanu looked at her then, calm again. "But I don't want my words to always defend you, Anna. You have your own voice, and it's stronger than you believe." His honesty struck her. She realized he wasn't just protecting her, he was pushing her to step into her own light. She stood slowly, her legs trembling slightly, and turned toward the small group of guests nearby who had overheard the critic's remark. Her heart pounded, but she forced her voice steady. "I don't need to shine like anyone else," she said softly, but loud enough to be heard. "I just need to be myself, and that is enough." For a moment, the room was silent. Then a few people clapped. The sound grew, not as loud as when Keanu had spoken earlier, but real enough to touch her heart. Anna sat back down, her chest rising with relief. She looked at Keanu, her eyes wet but filled with something new. Courage. "You were right," she whispered. "Kindness isn't about being perfect. It's about lifting others. And maybe I need to start lifting myself too." Keanu's smile was gentle, proud. "Exactly. Once you see your own worth, no whisper can take it away." As the hall emptied, the chandeliers dimmed, and the glamour of the night slowly faded, Anna realized the true victory wasn't the applause, the awards, or the flashing cameras. It was the quiet transformation inside her. The night had begun with jealousy breaking her heart, but it ended with kindness healing it. Not only Keanu's kindness, but the kindness she had finally learned to give herself. Walking out of the hall beside him, she no longer felt overshadowed. Instead, she felt equal, standing not in his light, but in her own. And in that balance of respect, humility, and resilience, she discovered a truth that would stay with her forever. Sometimes the greatest healing begins not when the world praises you, but when you choose to respect yourself, and with that, the night was complete.